So thank you, gentlemen, for the excellent presentation. It's now time to move on to our Q&A session. So ladies and gentlemen in the audience, as I mentioned earlier, I'm now joined by André and Ravi for this Q&A session. I believe we can all hear each other, is that correct? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, David.
Okay, excellent. I can hear both of you as well, so fantastic. We have a number of questions that have come in already, and we're going to try and get through as many as we can. There is still time to send in more if you're in the audience. We'll try and get through as many as we can today, but any that we don't get a chance to cover will be passed on to the team at KHD, and they'll be able to get back to you at a later date. So let's get on with our first question. Okay, so I think this question is probably directed at Ravi. Regarding the autogenous wear protection, how exactly does this minimize wear and tear?
Yeah, okay. This lies in the design of our aeration cassette. So these aeration cassettes have a recessed design which retains a layer of dead clinker always. And due to this, there is insulation between hot clinker and the metal surfaces. So abrasive wear and thermal wear is avoided completely, and metal surfaces are safe beneath this dead clinker layer. As a result, we get to minimizing the wear and tear.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. So I have a question here from the audience from Yao Silva, who asks a question regarding the Pyro floor square. He asks, is there a possibility of bypass gas recirculation using the Pyro floor square?
André?
We never did something like this in the past, so we mainly used exhaust gas to have a full recirculation. But for sure, this would be an interesting project.
Okay, excellent. So another question for you, André. Can you explain a bit about why you still offer the 3rd generation grate cooler when you actually have also the latest 4th generation moving floor cooler?
Well, that's basically because we are listening to our clients, because there are still certain market regions and clients which prefer to have a 3rd generation grate cooler for different reasons. Yeah, sometimes it's spare parts similarity if they have already a Pyrostep cooler. Sometimes it's because of the operators are used to the operation of a traditional grate cooler, because operations of a 4th generation cooler is slightly different. It's not a big difference, but for sure you have to train your people, and some clients just feel more comfortable, and that's why we are still offering it.
Okay, thank you. I have a question here regarding the Pyrostep square system from Akash Neil, who asks, what is the expected pressure drop across the static grates for Pyrostep and also in the moving zone?
Ravi, you want to?
Yeah, the static grate plates, for the bare plate, we did some CFD analysis and some practical tests as well, and it is 7.2 to 6, around 6.9 to 7.2 millibar against on the static grate plates without any clinker layer on top. And for the remaining grade plates, the K plates, it is 1.14, 1.15 millibar.
Maybe I jump in. Experience shows that the pressure drop, for sure, it is highly depending on the way the cooler is operated. And in Pyrostep square, there's one additional big influence we have for larger capacities. We have that double static grate. So that means we have a static grate and a movable zone and a second static grate, which extends to the longest static grate in the market, where you can highly efficient cool your clinker. And depending if we have a 1 or a 2 step static grade, we are ranging somewhere between 70 and 90 millibar in the static grade area.
Okay, thank you. I have a question to go back to Ravi with here. Regarding the hot standby pump, how do you ensure that this is ready to operate when needed?
Yeah, okay. First of all the ready signals of standby pumps are always monitored. So this means the signal coming from MCC or the associated signal coming from the its pressure sensor or line filter. All these are continuously monitored, and whenever a deficiency is noticed, it is announced to be corrected accordingly. Besides this, we also have something called automatic pump selection. And in this automatic pump selection mode, we have programmed a schedule into the PLC. This schedule is based on standby time. As soon as the standby time is lapsed, the standby pump becomes active, and one of the running pumps takes over the place of standby pump. And this changeover from standby to active pump is repeated in cyclic fashion, so that we ensure that all the pumps are functional, and also that all pumps are logging equal operating time. So that's how we ensure that pumps are in proper running working condition always.
Okay, thank you. Have a question come in here from Mohammed, and I think this is for either Pyrostep or Pyro floor square. He wants to know what is the maximum and sort of minimum cooler loading for around a 2000 TPD plant.
2000 TPD plant.
Yeah.
Okay. So in general, we have less problems, as you can imagine, with a low cooler grade loading. So we have projects where we have a two-step approach. That means we deliver a larger cooler right away, which is already capable of cooling the capacity of a second upgrade of the remaining Pyro line. So there we operate at cooler grade loads of roughly 30 tons per square meter a day. And our standard is somewhere between 42 and 45, but in particular in India, where the demand is getting higher and higher, and people are expecting that coolers can manage a high-loaded cooler, and that we can squeeze some more capacity by time out of our plants. We are going above 50.
Okay, thank you. I have another question in here from the audience as well, from Sudhir, who asks, what is the transportation efficiency of Pyro floor square and Pyrostep square?
Ravi, you want to reply, or I should?
Yes, the working floor cooler, because that means our Pyro floor square, it has a stroke length adjustability. The maximum stroke length is 350. So that means it has a higher transport efficiency, being function of stroke length. We reach up to 70-75% of transport efficiency with this cooler. Compared to grade cooler, what is our Pyrostep, the stroke lengths are much smaller, actually half. So, but they also come with inclined configuration. The grade configuration can also be inclined, and we reach around 68 to 70% of transport efficiency with this.
So as you can imagine, we put a lot of efforts and gray cells into that question, in particular when switching over from third to fourth generation. To be honest, we have seen everything from slightly above 50 until 70-80%. It highly depends on granulometry, on the liter weight of the clinker. There are so many factors influencing the transport efficiency that I would say, I would agree with Ravi. We are in general, I would say, with a normal clinker, not too fine, and a liter weight around 1,200 to 1,300, roughly at 70%.
Okay, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, we still do have time for more questions, so please feel free to keep sending them in. And as I mentioned before, any that we don't get around to covering, we'll pass on to the KHD team, and they'll be able to get back to you at a later date if we can't cover them today. I have a question here again for you, André. Do you offer coolers together in combination with waste heat recovery systems?
Yes, we have partners. It depends very much on where the client or where the plant location is. Yeah, we have partners we can collaborate with. We don't have it in our own portfolio, but we will always find a solution and the right partner for the right location.
Okay, excellent. I have a question here from Bashkar, who has asked, and I think again this is for both systems, Pyro Floor Square and Pyrostep. At what temperature does the clinker get discharged? What is the discharge temperature of the clinker?
Ravi.
Yeah, discharge temperature, what I understand means the temperature of cold clinker at the outlet, discharge end of the cooler. So normally, again, it depends a lot, as André already told, what is the granulometry and what is the liter weight of the clinker. But considering 1,250 to 1,300 liter weight, and a granule size ranging from 5 millimeter to 25 millimeters, we can guarantee 75 degrees plus ambient.
Okay. Sorry, André, did you want to add to that?
We cannot trick physics, yeah, and so what we are guaranteeing is what the industry standard is. Yeah, there is somewhere. It depends a little bit on the fuel, because if you are, for example, have a lot of alternative fuels or petcoke usage, generally you are creating a little bit finer and sometimes lighter cooler with clinker, which is harder to cool. So there we are adapting a little bit our temperatures, and for sure this is something everybody has to keep in mind. Whatever is not crushed or big bulks, you cannot cool. So if we are talking about an end crusher and there's a big lump, an agglomerate or a big clinker size, and it is crushed just before the measurement of the cold clinker, for sure we cannot keep 75 or 70 degree. But this is why we came up with the invention of our Pyro crusher IMC. That means our intermediate crusher. So you are crushing somewhere in between the cooling zone or in the after cooling zone, and thereby you have the chance to use the heat which is inherent in this larger clinker boards, to use it for your waste heat recovery system, for example.
Okay, thank you. And to change tack a little bit, again, a question here for you, André. Is it possible to retrofit pre-existing non-KHD coolers using Pyrostep Square or Pyro Floor Square designs?
Simple answer, yes, it is.
Okay, excellent. Anything you want to add to that, or should we just move on?
Well, we did a couple of projects. It always depends very much on the time available for the retrofitting. Yeah, if we, for example, keep the housing, for sure we can do that faster. In general, if it's a retrofitting and we are talking about very short times for the conversion, we are pre-assembling our Pyro Floor or even Pyrostep cooler on the ground outside the old existing cooler on a base frame, and then shifting it in on some rolls in 3 or 4 pieces into the existing cooler housing. This minimizes the downtime. That's how.
Okay. Right, thank you. And Ravi, regarding the Pyro Floor Square system, can this be installed on ground level and thereby reduce the overall height of the plant?
Yes, of course, this is possible because as we already mentioned in our presentation earlier, Pyrofloor is a spillageless cooler, so there is no undergrade spillage. Thereby, we do not need any mechanism to remove this undergrade spillage. And that's the reason why there is no need to put the cooler on an elevated platform. We can always install it on the ground, and hence you can reduce the height of the preheater tower itself. So that is a big advantage. You save a lot on civil construction costs and auxiliary costs as well.
Okay.
Because the entire Pyro system can come down by a couple of meters. And if you are considering an average, it depends very much on the local wage and what other costs. But if you are considering, let's say, 100K USD for each meter of preheater height, in addition, so easily you can save costs by installing a spillage-free cooler like Pyrofloor is.
Okay. I have a question here that's come in from Amit, who asks, with regard to sort of retrofitting and so on, what is the time frame for this kind of process?
Well, we always have to look at this particular project, yeah. So because it very much depends on which parts can be reused. Do we have to consider some works on the C part? So for this, we always do offer a tailor-made solution, I cannot give a general answer to this.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we have time for just the one more question. And again, I think this might be one for André. What are the main advantages, would you say, in brief, of the latest Pyrofloor square cooler from a process point of view?
Well, from process point of view, it's always a mix. You always try to find an equilibrium, yeah, of operational costs, investment costs, and for sure the process advantages contribute to the reduction of operational costs. And what I like the most is that we have that very short chambers plus our highly efficient pyrostatic now, so that we have a very efficient cooling at the beginning of the cooler, because what the old commissioning experts from 1970s, 1980s always told us is whatever you cannot cool in the front, you will not save in the rear part of the cooler. And that's why we very much focused on and high efficient cooling in the beginning of the cooler in the recuperation zone. And there we are quite good. And next to the process advantages, one of the USPs is, besides the low height, is the very, very low wear. Yeah, so we have clients really cheering us on maintenance costs far below 100K per year. And this is an additional headache. And if you are talking about, in particular, if you are talking about huge plant capacities, you are talking about 200, 250 square meter coolers. If you are considering that you need to exchange just 30 or 40% of the cooler plates annually, this is not only the exchange of these plates, it is you have to measure each and every plate, you have to realign them, you have to exchange them. That's a huge amount of work, which partly can even extend your annual shutdown just for this work. And this is something where we found a solution with our autogenous wear protection and the cassette design, where we let's say avoid a big headache of each plant unit head.
Okay, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid I think that's all we have time for today. I'd like to thank our panelists, firstly for their excellent presentation, but also for taking part in this Q&A session and answering your questions. And of course, I'd like to thank all of you for registering to attend today's event. If you do have any more questions, please feel free to get in touch with KHD via the contact details on your screen now. As I mentioned earlier, we'll also be sending everyone a recording of today's event in case you want to go over anything in your own time. And finally, before we draw today's session to a close, I'd just like to remind everyone that we have another excellent KHD webinar coming up on the 8th of September. This webinar, entitled Efficient Grinding Solutions, will present in-depth technical information on KHD's roller press technology. And of course, everyone who registered to attend today's event will be sent an email reminder closer to the time. So I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you again, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you, David. Thanks to
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone who joined. Thank you, David. Thank you, Mohu.